In a lot of jobs today where email and instant messaging is the norm for communicating with colleagues, clients, and customers, the line between being at work and off work is often quite blurred.
Because of this, it's now really hard to switch off and not think about work. We're always technically contactable by phone or email, we're always being bombarded with notifications, and there's always something new which needs to be done.
In this kind of environment, it's even more important to create more of a distinction between your work and your personal life, and to make time for the things that make you happy, like pursuing hobbies, interests, or even self-development and learning.
Hi guys, welcome to our channel. It's Em.
And Lloyd, and today we want to talk to you a little bit about how and why we deliberately carve out time for our personal lives, notwithstanding our busy work schedules.
As lawyers, it's possible for us to get contacted by clients and colleagues at any time, seeing as we not only have email on our phones, but we also use instant messaging apps for work a lot. On top of this, given the nature of our job, it's expected that we respond to emails and messages as soon as possible. While we've heard stories of other lawyers being expected to respond to all emails within 5 minutes, fortunately, we've never been subject to that, but urgent things do come up.
To give you an idea of how bad it can get, one time when I was still a trainee lawyer, Emily and I had gone out on a hike on a Sunday morning, and I had forgotten to take my work phone with me. I wasn't particularly busy at the time, and I wasn't expecting any emails to come in, so I thought it would be okay. But when we got home at around noon, I checked my phone to a number of missed calls and messages from a partner and a colleague. They were trying to find me to urgently request my attendance at a client's office for a meeting at 12:30 p.m. that day. And thankfully, I was able to shower very quickly and make it on time.
Well, that's a pretty extreme example. The issue of always being available and not being able to switch off is present to some degree in most jobs thanks to technology. As a result, we think it's become even more important to deliberately carve out time for ourselves and the things we love to do, because if we don't, it's pretty easy to let work run your life and get bogged down in the busyness and the stress without feeling fulfillment on the personal front.
On top of this, we find it's not enough to just make time to do things, but it's equally important to be mentally present while you're doing the thing itself. Not being able to mentally focus on the activity at hand, especially if it's for personal enjoyment, means that even though you're spending the time doing that activity, you're not getting the full satisfaction from being there.
Today, we want to share with you how we plan our personal time in our schedules to ensure that we're going to be as present as possible, while also less likely to be disrupted by work.
So the first and arguably most important thing that we do to manage our personal time is to try to schedule things at times where we're least likely to be disrupted by work or other obligations.
Of course, this varies a lot from person to person. The ideal time to do something changes based on the nature of your job, the times during which you're least likely to be busy, and the activity you're trying to plan.
In my case, as a corporate transactions lawyer, I'm usually expected to be online and responding to emails quite late into the evening, but as a trade-off, I don't start super early. As a result of that, I try to plan my personal activities in the morning. Provided I'm not really busy and having to work super late, I try to keep a schedule that allows me to wake up at 7:45 in the morning while still getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. When I manage to do this, I find that I can get at least 1 good hour of personal time before my workday starts, or if I'm working from home, which is usually the norm for me now, I'll get about an hour and a half before I sit down to start my day. In that time, I try to make it to the gym a few times in the week, as well as make some time to read or listen to a podcast and learn something new.
For me, as a disputes lawyer, my schedule is actually varied depending on the firm that I'm working at. At my previous firm, I also got into work a bit later, so I'd also schedule about an hour and a half of personal time in the morning before I started work. So, like Lloyd, I scheduled in various activities during that time in the morning, such as going to the gym, reading, or taking Chinese lessons, because I knew I was least likely to be disturbed then. However, at my current firm, both my team and our clients start their days early in the morning, but tend to also finish a bit earlier in the evening, so I moved some of my activities to the evening instead.
When building a routine and choosing time for personal activities, we find that there are 2 main considerations that come into play. The first one being how likely it is that you'll be disturbed in that time, and the second one being how consistently you'll be able to schedule that time for your personal activities. In my case, it's usually quite unlikely for me to be bombarded by urgent requests in the morning, and that's because my team usually sends things out in the evening, so our clients are reviewing in the morning. On the flip side, it's not always possible for me to wake up at 7:45 in the morning without sacrificing sleep when things get really busy, but I find that even if I sleep in and capitalize on 30 to 40 minutes before I start my day to get in a quick workout, it really helps me set up my day for success.
Consistency is the reason why I moved some of my activities to the evening, but not all. Because the time I get off work varies a lot more than the time that I start work, I tend to still prefer some activities like working out in the morning. This is because I found it's a lot easier to let working out fall by the wayside if I schedule it for after work when I'm already tired and I also might be getting off work too late to even make it to the gym. As a result, on weekdays I now go to the gym in the evenings half of the time and the mornings half the time, and I select the days depending on what my schedule looks like that week.
I have the luxury of working from home a lot these days, which gives me the added flexibility of not needing so much time to get ready for work in the morning, as I can shower and be at my desk in a very short span of time. But even when I'm going into the office, I try to treat my morning time as sacred, and I just add a couple of small hacks to try to make it as efficient as possible. For instance, I pack my gym bag the night before so that after I'm finished at the gym, I can change and get into the office right away. Packing my bag the night before also means that I spend less time in the morning getting ready, and it's a lot quicker for me to get out of bed and get out the door.
Another thing we do is schedule in personal activities on a weekly or regular basis while also letting people at work know in advance if necessary. For example, I schedule in personal training at the gym every weekend and painting classes every other weekend, and Lloyd schedules in personal training and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes every week.
While it's not necessarily guaranteed that we can make it to these things if the circumstances at work absolutely don't allow, we have found that it's been quite effective in terms of scheduling our personal time to sort of plan things in advance and let people at work know. I picked this one up from a colleague of mine who had a weekly scheduled appointment on Wednesday evenings with her functional medicine practitioner. It was really important for her to go, and that was a really hard booking for her to secure because the functional medicine practitioner was really high in demand. Given that this was the case, and since it was the only time in the work week that she scheduled as a non-negotiable for her personal time, in the 6 months that I worked with her, I only saw her miss a couple of sessions, and people in the team were generally very understanding of her going.
We use this as a way to actively manage expectations in the workplace. It's not only important to manage expectations when it comes to the work and the tasks that you've been assigned to do, but also in respect of your personal schedule and your availability. Understandably, people at work won't know when we're not available and when to expect that we won't be around unless we let them know in advance. In particular, if it's a scheduled weekly or regular activity, once you've let people know and reminded them as appropriate, you create that sort of baseline expectation that you won't be available at those times unless you need to be.
Now there is a fine line here too, and there are a couple things we want to point out with the strategy. The first of which is the fact that obviously it's possible to get carried away with this and just say that any time after 6 p.m. on a weeknight is scheduled relaxation time and that you won't be able to attend to emails. Practically speaking, this doesn't really work if you're working in any job that doesn't have set hours.
Secondly, this works for us because we've already created a track record of being responsible about our work. That way, whoever we're working with knows that we'll do what needs to get done even if we need to step away for a bit to attend to something personal. This strategy would not work if, say, we scheduled personal training or painting classes at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday and then disappeared afterwards and didn't do any of the tasks that we were supposed to do. Keep in mind that this is also a strategy which we use more sparingly because we found that tends to be more effective that way. Like in the case of Lloyd's supervisor, we've noticed that more often than not, if people know there's something important for you to make it to every week, they'll tend to try and respect that unless circumstances don't allow.
Now this isn't to say that there's only one thing that you can carve out for yourself to do per week, but it's more to say that if there's an important event or function that you want to be at, it's important to let people know in advance so that they're aware and there's less conflict. We find that it's always better to give our colleagues advance notice of things that we're going to be attending or things that we're going to be doing so that we can attend them, be mentally present, and continue working afterwards if needed. The last thing we want to talk about today is to be as deliberate as possible and have intention when planning your personal time, and to ensure that you're mentally as present as possible when you're actually doing the thing. This point is more about the mindset and the attitude that we have when doing personal activities, as opposed to actually how to schedule them, which we talked about previously.
When it comes to work activities like meetings or calls, it's a given that we deliberately and intentionally set times and dates for those activities in our calendars. This not only helps us remember and identify when those meetings and calls are, but also it reminds us that we need to be mentally present when those events are happening, and also to try to limit distractions when they're happening as much as possible. It would be pretty unprofessional to say the least if we were attending a work meeting or a call without being mentally present and doing things like trying to answer questions from the client while scrolling through Instagram or getting distracted and taking another call.
Over time, we realized that scheduling activities has the one benefit of carving out that time specifically for that activity, but also as a reminder for us to be mentally present during that period of time. We realized over time that making time for our personal activities often took a backseat to work obligations, but because work obligations are seemingly never ending in jobs like ours, there's always something that you could be doing or thinking about when it comes to work. We found that it was quite a waste, and we didn't really enjoy ourselves when we had personal time scheduled, but we were thinking about work or just thinking about all the stuff that we had to do after we were done.
By not being mentally present, personal activities which are meant to be fun or rejuvenating end up being not so enjoyable because your mind just keeps going elsewhere. I used to do this a lot actually, and I'd find that even though I was technically spending time doing personal activities, afterwards I would often feel like I hadn't fully enjoyed the experience or relaxed. In order to try and avoid that situation, we do our best to remember that the work will have to get done at some point anyways, and we will do it. However, if we let it occupy our minds all the time, we're neither really getting the work done or properly relaxing, which just doesn't do anything for anyone.
So now, while we still do keep our work phones on us at all times as part of our jobs, we do try to schedule deliberate time to do things that we enjoy and mentally be as present as possible in those times. This mindset, together with the principles that we talked about before, like deliberately scheduling time and letting people know when we have important activities on, really helps us make sure that we do get our personal activities in each work week.
So there you have it, guys. Those are things that we do and think about in order to deliberately carve out time for ourselves despite our busy schedules.
When time is already short and limited and our attention is being pulled in every direction, it really is important to try to treat that personal time as sacred and protect it at all costs.
Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you like this video, please hit that like button below and consider subscribing.
And if you have any thoughts on future videos you'd like to see, or any thoughts on anything we talked about in this video, please let us know in the comments.
We're not letting ourselves fully relax.
I'm so sorry. I tried so hard to hold it. I was dying.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.